Hello everyone. In today's program, let's take a look at a set of photos. If I don't provide any explanation, you might think these are some bizarre pictures leaked from a paranormal forum. In fact, they are facial reconstruction images created by forensic experts based on the skulls of the deceased. These images are used by the police to identify unidentified bodies and assist in solving cases. Many people believe that these images should resemble the actual appearance of the individuals as much as possible to be effective. However, in practical applications, the police have found the opposite to be true. If the simulated photos look too much like real people, many people might just overlook them and forget about them, making it difficult to trigger their memories. Therefore, the police have discovered that the most effective method is to make these reconstruction images look as strange as possible while retaining one or two distinct features of the deceased's face. This way, the images leave a lasting impression in people's minds and prompt them to think if they have encountered similar individuals. For example, this photo looks like a zombie running out of a set of The Walking Dead, but it accurately represents the age of the deceased and her characteristic twisted neck. And now, let's talk about a case that successfully solved a mysterious murder using such an unreliable-looking photo. In June 2014, in Wisconsin, USA, road workers were performing their biannual weed trimming when they came across two suitcases blocking their path. The suitcases emitted a foul odor and were crawling with flies. Curious, one of the workers decided to open the suitcases, only to find two highly decomposed female bodies inside. As soon as the police received the information, they rushed to the scene. They found that the bodies of the victims were bound together and in an advanced state of decomposition, with bones visible. It was evident that they had been dead for a long time. This was undoubtedly a heinous murder case. To solve the case, it was crucial to determine the identities of the victims. However, the heads of both deceased were mostly reduced to bones, and there were no identification documents on their bodies. The police could only assign them temporary names, Suitcase Body 1 and Suitcase Body 2. The first body appeared significantly younger than the second one, estimated to be around 20 years old. The forensic examiner noted that Body 1 had a higher cheekbone and protruding teeth, resembling a chipmunk. The police requested the forensic artist to emphasize this feature and take a more casual approach to the rest of the facial reconstruction. The forensic artist took creative liberty in reconstructing the face and produced an unreliable-looking photo of the deceased. Even the artist probably didn't expect that this photo alone would lead to the identification. However, surprisingly, not long after the police widely circulated this photo in the Midwestern United States, a woman contacted them, claiming that the photo resembled her long-lost adopted daughter. After comparing the dental records of the woman and the deceased, the police confirmed that Body 1 was Jenny Gomez, a 19-year-old girl from Ohio. She had been abandoned by her parents at a young age and grew up in various foster homes, feeling lonely and lacking deep friendships. Contact with her adoptive parents was infrequent, and she always felt like she lived in a loveless world. She was the perfect prey for a deranged killer's sick fantasies. The case continues. The identity of Body 2 was also established. The forensic examiners successfully reconstructed a tattoo found on her body and matched it to a missing person report from Minnesota. She was Laura Simonson, a 37-year-old single mother. Once the identities of the victims were known, the police immediately started searching for any connections between the two women. How did two individuals with such differing lives and circles end up dead together? After analyzing their computers and internet records, the police discovered that both women were deeply involved in BDSM activities. Specifically, they enjoyed being on the receiving end of pain and torture. Perhaps these two troubled women sought to suppress their inner anguish through physical pain. The police found that both women had registered as members on the same BDSM dating website and had corresponded with a male member via email. This man used the alias Mr. Handcuffs. The police attempted to trace his location through his IP address, but he was cunning and used software to mask his IP, slowing down the investigation. However, an unexpected clue emerged when an employee of a hotel recognized Laura from the photos released by the police. He remembered that she had stayed at the hotel where he worked. Fortunately, this conscientious hotel preserved surveillance footage for over a year. The police immediately obtained the surveillance footage, which showed Laura checking into a room under her own identity but never checking out. The next day, a middle-aged man checked out at the front desk, paying in cash to avoid revealing his identity. He loaded several suitcases onto a hotel trolley and drove away with them in his car. Little did the hotel staff know that one of those suitcases contained Laura's lifeless body. The police officers reviewing the surveillance footage found the man oddly familiar. After careful recollection, they were shocked to discover that he had been their colleague, a former police officer named Stephen Zellick. Stephen came from a family with a law enforcement background and had a promising future in the police force. However, driven by his perverse desires, he began using his position as a police officer to harass and exploit women in his jurisdiction. He even extorted money from individuals involved in the adult entertainment industry. When the police began investigating him, he preemptively resigned, evading punishment and leveraging his law enforcement experience to secure a position as a security company captain. The police immediately paid him a visit under the pretext of investigating Laura's disappearance. During the interrogation, Stephen initially denied ever meeting Laura, but admitted to communicating with her online. He probably didn't anticipate that the hotel would retain surveillance footage for such a long time. The police requested a DNA sample, which Stephen reluctantly provided. The DNA analysis confirmed that his DNA matched the samples found on the ropes used to bind the victims. With substantial evidence against him, Stephen was issued an arrest warrant. He was taken from his workplace directly to the police station, where he was confronted with all the evidence gathered thus far. The officers reminded him that he, too, had a background in law enforcement and therefore would not be subjected to the usual interrogation techniques. After a moment of silence, Stephen willingly confessed to all his crimes. According to him, his interest in sexual sadism started when he was 20 years old, and he had been involved in that lifestyle ever since. A few years ago, he met 19-year-old Jenny online and sensed her psychological vulnerability due to her troubled upbringing. Using compliments and manipulation, he convinced her to meet him in Wisconsin. However, during their dangerous asphyxiation play, he accidentally killed her. To avoid detection, he paid in cash and transported Jenny's body back home in a suitcase. Soon after, he met Laura, and a similar fate befell her during their sadomasochistic encounter. As Stephen had only one refrigerator at home, he stored Laura's body in a suitcase in the trunk of his car, which he used for work. For months, he would drive around with both bodies, completely unaware that they were decomposing due to the freezing temperatures of winter. However, as the summer months arrived, the bodies rapidly decayed, filling his car with a putrid odor. Complaints from co-workers and clients about the stench prompted his employer to warn him that if he didn't resolve the issue, he would be fired. Desperate to get rid of the smell, Stephen abandoned the suitcases containing the bodies on a remote roadside. In his chilling confession, Stephen maintained that the deaths of Jenny and Laura were accidental. He claimed that he had no intention of killing them but acknowledged that he had crossed the line in pursuit of his twisted desires. However, the prosecution and police had done their homework and presented a substantial case. They argued that individuals with unique sexual interests like Jenny and Laura might have masochistic tendencies, but that didn't imply suicidal inclinations. Usually, they would agree on a safe word to stop the activities if the pain exceeded their limits. Stephen, however, selfishly ignored their pleas, tightening the ropes without mercy, resulting in their deaths. The evidence collected revealed that Stephen had carefully planned his encounters with the victims. He guided them to sever connections with the outside world, deleting records of their communications and instructing them to tell their families that they were going on vacation. This demonstrated premeditation and a deadly trap set for them. The prosecution successfully convinced the judge and jury that Stephen Zellick was guilty of first-degree murder in Jenny's case. However, as Wisconsin had abolished the death penalty, the maximum sentence for first-degree murder was typically 25 years. Outraged by the crimes, the judge decided to add an additional 10 years, resulting in a 35-year sentence. Stephen was also found guilty of second-degree murder in Laura's case, which carried a mandatory 25-year sentence without the possibility of parole. In essence, if he lived to the age of 123, he might have a chance of being released, but perhaps prison life would be fitting for a former law enforcement officer who became a deranged killer. And that concludes today's episode. Thank you once again for your encouragement and support. We'll see you in the next episode.